Have you ever imagined a disease that could actually target certain groups of people, like based on their genes? What makes them, well, them? I mean, it sounds like something out of a sci fi thriller, but that's what we're diving into today on the deep dive, the reality of genetics and, well, bioweapons.
Yeah, that's right. We've been looking into this analysis that breaks down the science behind this, based on what we know right now. And it's really important for you to know that we're looking at potential future risks here. Like what could happen. We're not talking about actual weapons that exist.
Right, exactly. So, for everyone listening, our mission today is to break this whole thing down. We're going to look at the core ideas, see how possible this is, and figure out what it could mean, so you can get a clear picture of this complicated issue. So, first things first, how could someone even think about targeting people based on their genes?
Well, it all starts with the progress we've made in genomic technologies. We can now find these genetic markers. Think of them like unique flags in our DNA that are different between groups of people. Yeah. And what's both amazing and also kind of scary is that some of these genetic variations are linked to how our bodies work. This includes how our immune systems respond and even how we break down different substances. Okay, so let me see if I've got this right. Are you saying that if scientists find a genetic marker that's, let's say, more common in one group than another, they could then try to create a pathogen or a toxin that uses that weakness? Exactly. This analysis we're looking at, it gives this hypothetical scenario. Imagine a genetic variation that makes a certain group more susceptible to a virus, maybe because their immune system works a bit differently. In theory, a targeted bioweapon could be made to exploit that vulnerability, leading to a much worse illness in that group compared to others. It's the same idea with enzyme activity. Differences there, influenced by genetics, could make certain populations more vulnerable to specific toxins. So for everyone listening, the key here is the possibility of using these subtle genetic differences to cause more harm to one group than another, not necessarily to completely wipe out a specific group.
Okay, yeah. That's a scary thought. So it's not about a disease that only affects one group, but one that could cause a lot more damage to them than to others.
Yeah, you got to. That's a really important difference to understand. True genetic uniqueness, across large groups of people, that doesn't really exist. But the point wouldn't be to have 100% accuracy. It would be to create enough of a difference in how the disease affects people to, achieve a strategic goal.
Right. So how close are we to actually being able to design these kinds of selective threats? This brings us to the idea of precision pathogens, right?
It does. This analysis talks about some really cutting-edge technologies like synthetic biology, where we can actually engineer biological systems, and machine learning, which can analyze tons and tons of biological data. The concern is that these tools, which can do so much good, could also be used to design pathogens that are specifically made to interact with certain genetic profiles.
That's a really crucial point. The source material we're looking at mentions reports that suggest that right now, some bad actors might already be using bioinformatics. And for you listening, that's basically using computers to make sense of all the biological data we can now collect, like our genetic codes, to figure out these infection susceptibilities within different groups of people. It sounds like something straight out of a spy movie.
It really does. And it shows just how easy it could be to misuse these research tools, which are actually super valuable when used for the right reasons. The example they give in the analysis, imagine pathogens that are programmed to, mess with immune responses or disrupt microbiome functions that are vital to certain groups. I mean, that's pretty sophisticated stuff. And just a reminder for you, our microbiome is all those trillions of microbes living in and on us. It actually plays a big role in our health, and it's often influenced by our genes. So the worry is that this microbiome, this delicate ecosystem, could also be a target. This brings up another crucial point for you. All these huge data sets that are being collected, they could be combined to create a very detailed picture of vulnerabilities within specific populations, making targeted attacks more, doable.
So we have the potential to, identify targets, and it looks like we're getting closer to being able to design these precision pathogens. But how would they actually deliver such a weapon in a targeted way? That seems like a big obstacle.
Right. This analysis explores a few theoretical concepts here. One is called selective transmission. This is where a synthetic bioweapon would be designed to spread through a population, but the carriers wouldn't show any symptoms. They'd be asymptomatic, and it would keep spreading until it hit individuals with those specific target genes. The idea is that those without the genetic vulnerability wouldn't get that sick, while those with it would bear the brunt of the disease.
Wow, that's disturbing. A silent spreader that only really affects certain people.
What about more direct ways of delivering it?
Well, there's this concept called gene-specific activation, which takes things a step further. The analysis mentions these advanced delivery systems like nanoscale microfluidic chips. Imagine these incredibly tiny devices, much smaller than the width of a human hair that's nanoscale, and these microfluidic chips can manipulate fluids at that scale. So theoretically, they could be designed to release toxins or activate pathogens only when they're inside someone with specific genetic markers. Like, picture a microscopic device that analyzes your DNA right there and then and only releases its payload if there's a genetic match.
That's mind-blowing. And as you said, pretty unsettling to think about. Now, the analysis does say that while all of this sounds possible in theory, there are some major roadblocks to actually making these weapons, right? It's not as easy as just having the idea.
Absolutely. The technical challenges are huge. Like the analysis points out, humans share over 99.9% of their DNA. So finding those truly unique and significant genetic differences that could be exploited for precise targeting, that's incredibly hard. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but on a massive scale.
And I imagine the resources needed would be enormous. This isn't something you could just whip up in a basement lab, right?
No, not at all. To develop these kinds of targeted bioweapons, you'd need experts from all sorts of scientific fields, genomics, synthetic biology, virology, immunology, you name it. And you'd need a ton of money and access to huge databases of genetic information. This really limits who could actually do this. It's much more likely to be something that only really powerful entities could pull off, like nation states.
So even though the science is moving fast, the practical challenges to actually weaponizing this stuff are still pretty big. But even the potential for this kind of technology is worrying. The analysis mentions some historical precedents, and those are definitely a warning sign for us all.
Yeah, for sure. The fact that people have been exploring the idea of targeting populations based on genetic differences in military contexts for decades, even if they haven't made any actual weapons, should make us stop and think.
And these days, we're collecting genetic data on a scale we've never seen before. I mean, think about routine medical tests, like the ones for COVID-19 and those ancestry kits you can buy online. The analysis talks about data exploitation as a major concern.
That's a really crucial point for you to understand. All this biometric information that's being gathered and stored could become a vulnerability. The worry is that foreign governments or other bad actors could get access to this sensitive data. They could use it to find genetic vulnerabilities or even develop the very bioweapons we're talking about. The analysis specifically mentions concerns about foreign access to U.S. genetic data, which is pretty concerning.
It's a chilling thought that your own genetic information, maybe from something as simple as an ancestry test, could be used against you or others who share similar genetic markers. So let's talk about the real-world impacts. What if this kind of weapon actually became a reality? The analysis lays out some pretty serious threats to national security.
Absolutely. Targeted bioweapons could be used to incapacitate or, cause a lot of harm to specific parts of a population. This could have a devastating impact on a society and a country's security. Imagine a scenario where military personnel with a specific genetic trait are targeted, weakening a country's defenses.
Or the idea of using pathogens to target leaders, maybe causing cognitive problems, that could destabilize entire governments.
Exactly. The possibility of targeted attacks on leaders or critical infrastructure using specific genetic predispositions, that's a serious concern. And if we look beyond national borders, the global consequences are huge. Yeah. Developing and using these weapons would clearly violate international agreements like the Biological Weapons Convention, which forbids making, producing, stockpiling, or using biological weapons.
And then there's the potential for a domino effect. What if countries feel like they have to develop their own targeted bioweapons to protect themselves? That could lead to a whole new and very dangerous era of global instability.
Yeah, the risk of escalating tensions between countries in retaliation is very real. This isn't just about one country developing a weapon. It's about the possibility of a whole arms race in this new and ethically questionable area.
So with all this in mind, what can we do to prevent this? The analysis talks about some prevention strategies.
The first key area is regulation and oversight. We need stronger international rules and regulations that cover both the protection of genomic data and oversight of biological research. This means making sure research is conducted responsibly and setting clear global standards.
And the second vital part is data security. It might seem obvious, but governments and organizations that collect and store genomic data need to make its security a top priority. This is about protecting people's privacy and national security.
Exactly. Strong cybersecurity measures are essential to prevent this sensitive genetic information from falling into the wrong hands, whether it's adversarial countries or non-state actors.
So to sum it all up for you, the listener, what's the most important takeaway from this deep dive?
The key here is that while creating reliably targeted bioweapons is still mostly theoretical because of the huge technical hurdles, the rapid progress we're making in understanding genetics and manipulating biological systems means this could become a reality in the future.
And the potential for breaking international law, along with the catastrophic risks to global security, are almost unimaginable.
Yeah, exactly. That's why prevention is so important. We need strong regulations, tight data security measures, and solid international cooperation to make sure these powerful genomic technologies are used responsibly for the good of public health and never for something as horrific as targeted warfare.
That's a sobering thought to leave you with. Think about this. As we learn more about the complexities of life, the potential for misusing that knowledge also grows. What responsibility do we have, both individually and as a global society, to make sure that ethical considerations and strong safeguards keep up with the rapid advancements in this field? That's something I hope you'll reflect on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.